This is Tyler Robson, CEO and co-founder of Valens, and you're listening to Professionally Cannabis.
Where do they go, the smoke rings I blow each night?
Hello listener, and welcome back to Professionally Cannabis. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to you, Oscar.
Happy New Year, Johnny.
It's been a while since we've been back on the airwaves. Who have we got on the pod today?
Let me just check my notes, as it was such a long Christmas period ago. Oh yes, Valens. Valens now. I know that to be the 4th century Eastern Roman emperor, credited with being an Arian Christian who persecuted not the pagans but the Catholics, and I think...
Check the other page.
Oh, the Valens Company. Yes, not a 4th century emperor, but the 5-year-old Canadian company. Yes, well, I think we can all look forward to your interview with Tyler Robson and find out more about what it means to really get the most out of this plant.
That's the right one. I knew we'd get there in the end. And listeners, some of you may be more familiar with the organisation under the name of Valens Growworks. However, they've recently rebranded. This is a result of their expansion, both in terms of their product offering and the locations that they're operating in. But rather than hearing it from me, let's hear it from Tyler. Listeners, enjoy.
Where do they go, the smoke rings
It gives me
I blow
great pleasure to welcome Tyler Robson, CEO of Valens Growworks, to Professionally Cannabis, a leading extraction company that prides itself on working with world-renowned growers and LPs. Based out of Canada, but with an international footprint, it was recently announced that the company has nearly doubled its quarterly revenue, which makes me think it's not been too bad a year for Valens. What do you reckon, Tyler?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It hasn't been a bad year for Valens, and we're excited to participate in the cannabis sector as a whole. And we're excited for cannabis kind of 2.0 in Canada, but also excited for the movement of global cannabis legalization and the platform that's coming.
Well, you and me both. And to lead us on to our first and customary question on the podcast, Tyler, what led you to the plant?
I think it's a wide variety of things. One, the opportunity to help people is a massive one for us at our organization. We kind of have the slogan, it's personal. Everyone uses cannabis for different reasons, whether it's to relax or anti-inflammatory or even as far as like pets. So we believe every unique user has a personal reason why they're using cannabis, and we really want to tap into that demographic and help people and give them an ethical way to consume cannabis, because I think a lot of people forget cannabis has been around for a lot of years, and now we're just really providing a different platform, a different way of ingestion for them to use ethically.
And to get us a little bit of a feel about you, how did your professional journey that pre-existed Valens equip you to take this next step? And looking, back way earlier in your career, did you ever think you'd be working in cannabis?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm probably one of the only CEOs that truly believed he was going to end up in cannabis. So yeah, I'm pretty fortunate to be, I kind of grew up around the plant and grew up around the sector, being involved in the MMAR, MMPR, and then being involved in Colorado in the early days of the medical program before it went recreational. So cannabis is probably the only thing I am comfortable with in the corporate world. And I think that's why Valens has been so successful, because not only do we have the background, but we also have the image and the expectation of what cannabis should be.
Now, for folks that might be less familiar with Valens, could you tell us a little bit more about the company, what you do, where you do it, and why?
Absolutely. So first things first, we're kind of born and bred in British Columbia, Canada. Now we have a national footprint where we have 2 locations in Ontario and 2 locations in British Columbia in the Okanagan Valley. And the big things for Valens is we're really the value add services. So not only do we do third-party extraction, we do product formulation, product testing, distribution. We believe we're kind of the one-stop shop, but the one thing about us is we don't actually cultivate plants. So we don't ever grow a gram, nor do we ever intend to.
Could you give us a little bit of a flavor of the type of clients that you guys typically work with, and in what capacity do they engage with the business?
Absolutely. So I think if you look at our product offering and our diverse clients, we're one of the only ones that have such a wide variety. So we have your conventional licensed producers such as Canopy, Tilray, Hexo, Organigram, Sundial. We've also done deals with pharmaceutical companies like Shoppers Drug Mart. And we've also done deals with a few kind of outsiders that don't actually have any cannabis licenses, whether it's Iconic Brewing or Burnt for vape pens. We've also done a deal with a liquor company that we can't really talk about yet. But yeah, our variety of clients is well versed, and I think we're comfortable because I think a lot of licensed producers are going to be very successful. But if you look at the wider clients out there, the P&Gs of the world, the Shoppers, some very large companies, they've been around for a long, long time. And we believe they're doing it right. And we'd love to work with them continuing to go forward.
And with regards to the different extraction techniques that you guys offer your clients, could you go through each and highlight why particular clients might have particular needs for certain extraction methodologies?
Absolutely. So the most popular one we're seeing right now is CO2, which we can basically say it's a full spectrum oil. You get a lot of your fats, lipids, waxes, but you also get a lot of chlorophyll and a few unwanted contaminants. But you basically keep intact your entire cannabinoid profile as well as terpene profile. So that would be great for a vape pen or different stuff where you can really get a flavor profile off the cannabis. Whereas if you look at ethyl alcohol or ethanol, that is such a volatile solvent that it damages a lot of the cannabinoid content, a lot of the terpene profile. And it's better suited for like a topical cream, a pet food, or even going all the way down to an isolate. So very different cost structure, very different run times. To throw some kind of parameters around it, CO2 to about 22 kilos, it takes about 12 hours. In that same 22 kilos, it takes us about 8 minutes on ethanol. So completely different structure, completely different timeline, completely different end product. And really to be kind of a one-stop shop, I think people had to diversify their platform of extraction. So we do a terpene strip, so we can actually extract terpenes from the raw cannabis material. We do a solventless, which is basically live rosin, where you're using heat and pressure, or you can also make like what we call bubble hash. And then the last one would be hydrocarbon. And hydrocarbon is tough because there's so many different types of hydrocarbon, whether it's pentane, hexane, butane, kind of anything with the tane in it. And that's kind of the most expensive, most volatile solvent. And that's kind of for your boutique or craft cannabis where you're making shatter, wax, diamonds, really your high-end connoisseur products.
And a lot has been spoken about Cannabis 2.0 products. Who are your typical consumers, and in what way have you seen trends in customer demand change over the last year?
For sure. So the big thing for us is we believe everyone's going to participate in Cannabis 2.0. I think the days of rolling a conventional joint and sparking it with a lighter aren't ideal for the new consumer of 2.0, whether it is an ingestible or digestible or an inhalant, whether you're using a vape pen or even a soft gel or even a cannabis beverage. We're big believers in different types of ingestion. We believe we're built for Cannabis 2.0, and we're really just starting to get traction now, and we're excited for what the future holds.
And of course, as the space gets more and more competitive, R&D around extraction, around testing and other bits of technology become more and more pertinent.
Absolutely. R&D is everything to our organization as far as even looking at how the plant is grown, where it is cultivated, how it's extracted, why we're using different types of extraction, and also looking at new technology coming out. IP is extremely important to us. And one thing that no one realizes about Valens is we have that Center of Excellence by Thermo Fisher for plant-based medicine. And if anyone's familiar with Thermo Fisher, they're about a $100 billion US market cap company. They named us the Center of Excellence because we're so much further ahead in analytical testing, product development, and product formulation than anyone else in this space. So they really wanted to work with us and collaborate on products we're putting out. So we're super excited. Our R&D team is working extremely hard to bring different products and different formulations, whether it's accelerated doses or decelerant. So when you take a beverage or an edible, it can hit you in about 10 to 15 minutes and only lasts for about 45. So basically gaining trust with the consumers and putting a quality product on the shelf that we all stand behind.
And with regards to products, I know earlier you mentioned companies like P&G, will soon be entering the space. Sort of what interest and appetite have you got from the more traditional brands that are looking to enter the cannabis space?
The one thing we've noticed at Valens is a lot of those big companies are a lot more active than we ever would have anticipated. If you would have asked me 7 years ago when I started Valens, how many Fortune 500 companies would be knocking on our door to have a conversation, I would have probably said none, or maybe one would get a little bit more proactive. But I think the global movement of cannabis is coming, and I think they're paying attention a little bit more than we ever would have expected. And the one conversation we keep hearing about is that they're staying away from your conventional LPs. Because if you look at the way the liquor industry kind of laid out, how many times did Diageo or Molson's or any of these other liquor companies wish they cultivated more hops or wish they cultivated more barley? I don't believe that conversation ever happened. So I think that's why Valens is such an attractive partner, because we've set up the way they did back when Prohibition ended. And we're excited to kind of continue. So not only are we positioned well, they get the business plan, and they're excited to basically see the global movement in cannabis and what the potential is.
And with that in mind, what do you think the future is for current and more boutique cannabis players, bearing in mind that, you know, large organizations and conglomerates like P&G are looking to get into the space? Do you think there's room for both to coexist in the market?
Absolutely. I think it's almost mandatory that they do coexist. And the big thing I would tell some of the smaller players coming in, or the ones that just got licensed, is to remain focused and really find your niche in the market, whether it is high-end vape pens, high-end indoor cultivation, whatever your kind of boutique or whatever your expertise is. I would basically recommend you stay focused and don't try to do everything. So when you look at how many people say they're vertically integrated, and then you look at other companies, whether it is Kraft Heinz or some of the big CPG companies out there, very few are actually vertically integrated because it doesn't make sense. You have to be extremely detail oriented and remain focused and really do what you excel at. So I would basically, give that recommendation, is to stay focused and stay in your lane and execute as the best of your ability.
Moving on to a slightly different tack. I understand you're quite the sportsman and actually attended university on a football scholarship way back when.
I did back in the day, yeah.
Now, I guess looking at professional sports, you know, we've already seen folks like Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson openly talking about CBD use at the Masters in golf. There are actually 2 rugby players in the UK who have started their own CBD line. And there are household names in American football like Gronk who have become CBD brand ambassadors, etc., etc. The list goes on. You know, with this in mind and moving forward, how do you think cannabis-derived medicine and cannabis-based consumer products can and will be able to fit in with professional sports?
Yeah, so I think when sports organizations wake up, they'll welcome cannabis. Like if you look at the MLB, the Major Baseball League in the United States, they just basically said they were going to stop testing for cannabis. I believe it's a long time coming, and change is good. Yeah, I can't say enough about how proud I am that some of the leagues are actually opening their eyes, and even the opioids. If you look at the opioid crisis in athletes and kind of what the doctors are prescribing, if you can have an alternative method of ingestion or a different product that doesn't do as much damage, I think you're doing a terrible disservice to not allow that. So I'm excited for different organizations to kind of open up their eyes and see what's going on in the global platform of cannabis. Because if you look at the data coming out, it's mind-boggling that they wouldn't accept it at this point in time. Whether you look from Charlotte's Web back in the day with the girl that was having seizures, or even some of the anti-inflammatory or even the concussion studies coming out on cannabis, I think it's inevitable that it's going to come. I just hope it's sooner than later.
And what other industries do you envisage, sort of looking into the future, sort of asking you to be Nostradamus of sorts? Well, what other industries do you see cannabis penetrating in the near future that it hasn't quite?
I'd be crazy not to say almost every sector out there, but the big ones we're seeing right now is pets. Pet food is going to be a massive one that we're currently seeing. Cosmetics is another one, but even the natural health products, NHPs, or health and wellness is going to be a big one, whether it's protein powder or CBD or a multivitamin that contains CBD and different cannabinoid content. So I would say those are the big 3 as of today that we're seeing the movement in.
Okay, great. Moving on to a slightly different topic, I'd love to ask a few questions about you yourself as a leader. You know, if I was to walk into one of the Valens sites, you know, across the pond, what would your colleagues say about you? How do you think they perceive you as a leader?
I would say honest, trustworthy, and a proven track record. Because if you look at a lot of CEOs in the space, I don't want to say a lot of them don't have the cannabis experience, but also a lot of them don't want to get their hands dirty. I'm willing to sweep the floor, scrub machines, move cannabis in and out of the building. I've actually been seen like physically extracting plant material when a few people have phoned in sick. So I think I take it personally too, just like everyone in our entire organization. It means something. We're proud to wear that logo, and we're honored to be part of the global cannabis movement and play a part in legalization in not only Canada but on the global platform. So I think everyone in our organization would be proud to work for Valens and happy that I'm kind of tagging along for the ride. And I know Valens has done a terrific job in kind of building a name for ourselves, but I can't take credit for that. We have a fantastic team. Everybody works extremely hard. And we're happy to be here.
And what would you say are the benefits, but also the pitfalls of leading a listed company?
So there's a few things I kind of learned the hard way. One, you can't keep everybody happy. Investors are never happy. If your stock is at $2, they wanted $3. And if you're at $3, they wanted $4. So coming to terms that they're never going to be satisfied. They always want more. Part of being publicly listed, a lot of my time goes to corporate compliance, maintenance, meetings with investors. So I've been pulled away from the core business a little bit more than I would have thought early on. That being said, a few people have stepped up in an organization like Chantal Popoff or Quinn Shishkin, and they've done a fantastic job in kind of helping steer the ship. So we're fortunate to have them part of our team.
And who would you say is the biggest influence in your life in a professional capacity?
Oh, that's a tough one. We have a few very, very good people on our board of directors. I would look at Deepak Anand, which has actually been on your podcast before. He's tremendous with regulatory and even just a good level head for an opinion. We have a guy named Phil Dawn, who is the ex-CEO of Kellogg's on our advisory team. He's been a breath of fresh air and just helping me navigate the public markets and scaling growth. I would say those are the two big ones kind of on our team that have mentored me and pushed me in the right direction and make sure I'm headed in the right direction.
And if you were to give some advice to listeners of ours, say there might be some of our listeners who are thinking, hey, extraction looks like a good part of the cannabis sector. I'm going to set up an extraction business. What advice would you give them? And do you have any war stories that they could learn from? Perhaps avoid doing something that you and the organization maybe learned the hard way?
Absolutely. So I like that. That's a loaded question again, because I could talk for hours and hours on the mistakes we made over at Valens. But I would say a few things. One, just because you buy the world's most expensive oven doesn't mean you're going to become a 5-star chef. So it's not about the technology, and it's almost about the IP. So it's extraction is this weird place in time where art meets science. So just because you read an SOP or you read a book on extraction doesn't mean you're going to be able to figure it out. And two, I'd look at the equipment you're getting into. So we've spent way more money than we ever should have doing R&D, trying different equipment. People saying that their extraction equipment could do A, B, and C, and then it did 1, 2, and 3. So really just finding out what works, what doesn't, taking the time and really not rushing it, and scalability. What machines and what operators can scale from 1 kilo a day to 10 kilos a day to 1,000 a day to now our capacity is going to break 1 million kilograms a year. How does it scale? Workflow, GMP, cleanliness, cleaning time, post-processing. Yeah, like I said, I could talk for hours on what not to do. And we've kind of learned the hard way, but we feel like we've perfected our craft now.
And you mentioned earlier about investors, keeping investors happy. Before you guys went public, how did you guys go about fundraising? And are there any lessons there that you could give to listeners of ours? Any pearls of wisdom?
Absolutely. So it was easy for us to find money at the time because we had our licenses, we had a business plan, and we had a team to execute. But I would say not everybody's money is the same value. So pick your investor strategic, pick people that have the long-term vision, that support your management team, that align with kind of your goals and your dreams. Yeah, and I would stay away from the easy money, because at the end of the day, again, some investors are super friendly and believe in the vision, and some are here to make a quick dollar and get out as quick as possible. So I would say pick smart money and pick the guys that you see yourself kind of fighting with and fighting for. And again, yeah, just taking money that you believe in and making sure you have a business plan that you can execute on.
And building on that, are there any types of investors that you guys perhaps wouldn't like to work with, but before you went public? And maybe as an extension of that, I know we said earlier around a lot of the growers and LPs that you work with are really sort of that top tier. Are there any organizations that if they were to approach you, you guys would politely have to say, no, unfortunately, we're unable to work with you, and why, if so?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a combination. So with investors, we don't like quick money. We want people here for the long term. We don't care where the sector is in a month. We don't care where it is in 6 months. We're looking 10 years away. Like, what happens in 10 years? Where is Valens going to be positioned? And really being long term while providing shareholder value. As far as clients, there are some clients we stay away from. We're very careful on who we put our name on, because again, we're thinking long term. Who's sustainable? Who has cash in the bank? Who's executing? Who's firing on all cylinders? Because right now, I think there's 190 licenses. That's not sustainable in Canada. The market isn't big enough. So really working with people that are going to be here long term and almost have stayed in their lane. So if you're a good grower and they're executing fantastic at growing, then we'd be happy to work with them. But if they're mediocre growing, mediocre at extraction, mediocre at product development, and they have mediocre distribution, I feel like that's a recipe for disaster. So we'd probably stay away, if you know what I mean.
For CEOs and other leaders that are listening to your episode today, what advice could you give to them about how you can adapt and change your business as the services and portfolio of offerings you have expand?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And the big thing for Valens is you have to be nimble and you have to evolve with the sector. So when we started the company in kind of 2012, we wanted to be a third-party processor. We wanted to take product in, extract it, and send it back. But with the overwhelming demand of Cannabis 2.0, we've actually gone ahead and switched our name. So we were formerly known as Valens Growworks, and we've now switched it to kind of the Valens company, a little bit more global, a little bit more international, but really focusing on our core competencies and where we're going. And I think Wayne Gretzky said it best: skate to where the puck's going, not where it is. And we really believe in kind of the shift of the global cannabis market right now, and that's why we've changed our name to make sure we're tapping into the kind of Valens 2.0, so to say. So we're really set up for vapes, beverages, concentrates, really more testing, more product development, more formulations, and really starting to shift away from just bulk processing. No knock to processing, but that's where we kind of cut our teeth in the sector, and we're evolving just like cannabis. Things are changing and we want to stay ahead of the curve.
And with that in mind, looking at 2020, what would you say are the biggest opportunities and conversely the biggest challenges for Valens as a business?
Yeah, so the biggest opportunities would be Cannabis 2.0 when it actually hits the shelf. I know as of today, December 17th, you can officially ship to provincial retailers, but when that actually hits the shelves is to be determined. So I would say Cannabis 2.0, vape pens, beverages, edibles, I think are going to be massive. I think they're going to do a great job in getting people excited about the cannabis space again. Another big thing for Valens is international expansion. We believe we're serving the Canadian market extremely well today. We want to bring our technology, our IP, and our influence to different countries and different jurisdictions. But at the same time, the biggest bottleneck is the regulatory environment at the international level, whether it is Germany, Australia. There's so many kind of hurdles to get through before we can really do that. So our regulatory team is working extremely hard to make sure those barriers and entry points are open for when we decide to make that shift.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to seeing Valens grow from strength to strength in 2020 and beyond. Tyler, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for joining us on Professionally Cannabis.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and we'll chat soon.
Where do they go? The smoke rings I blow each
Well, listeners, we hope you enjoyed the first episode of the new year. And if I know my listeners, they're dedicated and determined and will almost certainly have New Year's resolutions. New Year's resolutions such as those to like and subscribe to this podcast. So get on with it. Click the like, click the subscribe, write a glowing review, share it with your grandma if she's interested. Do all of it and we'll see you next week. Ta-ra.
Hello, please take me above. Take me with you